Welcome back to another episode of Political Gurus slash political animals. I slurred a little bit, depending on whether you're from America or Europe. If we're talking about America today, then we're political gurus. So this is another episode, and we're continuing with the Trump federal saga, going buck ass on black cities. Okay, so Trump is now threatening to send and deploy troops, not troops, National Guard. Let's make the difference because it's not the military. He doesn't have the power to send the military that easily. National Guard to Chicago because of their crime problem. Now, the mayor of Chicago says that this is very alarming to him and cites the fact that they have 30% less crime in Chicago. I did the test. I did the check. Yeah, they have 23% less than last year. I think last year they had about 600 murders for the whole year. Right now, they're on pace to have about 400, about a little less than 500 murders. I'm going to address that first, Kunle. The stats that show the murder are down. That's correct. They show the gun shootings are down, but the numbers are alarmingly high. So even if Chicago has a 30% drop in murders this year, they're still going to have about 500. They've had as far high as 1,000. They had 1,000 about, I think, right after COVID. And they've had 1,000 in the past, gone up to 900. They're still going to have 400. London, which is a big city in Europe, which has a higher population than Chicago, has only 80 murders at most a year. If London has 100, that's a catastrophe. If London has
the whole of England, 300 murders a year compared to America's 40,000.
Yeah, so there is a murder problem. So what the Chicago guy is saying, yeah, the murder's down, but it's still alarmingly bad. And I'm going to speak qualitatively because I live in a black city. I live in D.C. I know what the hood is like. I know what the hood is like in Chicago. I know what it's like in New Orleans. I know what it's like in Baltimore. I know what it's like in Richmond, Virginia, where my mom came from. It's oppressive and frightening. When you're a black male in any of these areas, you live with anxiety. You drink, you smoke weed, you sometimes you do drugs to cope with the trauma of being a black male in these cities. Female too, but especially black males. There's a gang problem in major black American cities because black American males are being used for the drug cartel. And it doesn't seem like the cities, I'm talking about the black cities, or because all of this is only happening in black cities. And for most of these cities are run by black mayors or by black city council. I'm not saying it's their fault. It's a national problem. It goes all the way up to the Congress and Senate doing nothing about it. But these guys are not taking enough initiatives in their neighborhoods. A lot of them grew up in these neighborhoods. They're not taking the initiative to solve the problem of crime. And I don't know what the answer could be because if you're not getting federal funding, if you're not getting taxed, if businesses aren't being taxed, and if money is being spent on Israel or Ukraine war and those things, I don't know where the money is going to come to intervene for black communities. But it has to start with the black leaders. It has to start with the mayor Bowser in DC, the mayor of Chicago. They, along with the community, have to be on the same page. They have to be on the same page with the community and identify this as a problem and push a civil rights movement, the likes of which we saw with Martin Luther King and co., to demand that there's a change in the political structure of this country. I think that if you're a black person in the U.S. now, it's time to stop voting for the Democratic Party. I think if you're a black politician, if you're going to run with the Democratic Party, you have to take a stance like guys like Mandani and co., where you push for revolutionary change rather than sitting in City Hall. I don't know what the fuck they're doing up there. What are your thoughts, Kunle?
Yeah, the situation in America has become rather insane in terms of the dangers and the violence, from what I understand. I have to take your cue because I think nowadays there's so much misinformation going on, even by authorities, that we can only really know the truth from the people who are experiencing it firsthand.
On the ground, yeah.
Yes. Now, I looked at some of the laws, and there is also a little confusion in Trump's understanding of the law. You see, the best way to explain it is that DC works a bit like Abuja in the sense that even though, there's several laws that allow you to call in, you make use of the local police in in DC. The government, the federal government can use for about 30 days. But in New York, there's more control
And
over,
Chicago too.
yes, there's more control over what you can do with your what you call it, with your police in your state in New York. So Trump will have some issues there trying to manage.
He's not going to be able to. So what he's going to do? He's got to do like what he did in Florida, in California. He's going to have to federalize the state troops and put them in there, but they can't control the police department. So he can't control prosecutions. He can't take control. And to me, people can get mad at me. That's a bad thing. The police need to be controlled because if it's out of order, trust me, if it's out of order, well, let's get to your point first before I go to that anyway. So what he can do is send in troops. He can send in National Guard to stand and protect federal sites and to stop any incitement of violence, but he can't arrest criminals. But he can put National Guard on the streets. And if they see a crime about to take place, they can call the police, or they might even be able to, I don't know if they can shoot at a criminal. Let's say somebody's trying to shoot somebody. But the presence of them alone would be intimidating for thugs. Now, a lot of people will say that communities don't want to see police coming in there and everything. Here's what I don't want to see. I don't want to see black boys who everybody knows where they live that are drug dealers, and they say, oh, you better watch out. You better respect Nene because he's going to shoot your ass. That's what I don't want to see. I don't want to feel intimidated in my own neighborhood where I'm not being funny. Oh, you better not talk to that girl. Her boyfriend will kill your ass if you talk to her. And at night, I have to worry about somebody kicking in my door and coming in to shoot me. I'm not exaggerating. If you think I'm exaggerating, read the newspapers in America and find out what black people are killing each other for. Now, yeah, and this is a problem. I'm not saying that we're savages. Black people are not savages, but this is a problem of the social economic condition in America. Black America in the Black American cities has degraded to the point at which criminals can perform crime with impunity. In Chicago, they have a no bail thing, which means you can, if you commit a crime, you can go out without having to pay bail if they release you. That's enabling criminals. So bringing in Trump or bringing in these troops is an authoritarian act, but it's an act of law and order, which will scare some criminals, save to a point, at least if they want to commit a crime, they won't do it so brazenly. They'll have to find sneaky means. Like maybe they'll have to kidnap you in the middle of the night and make you disappear rather than shoot you in the head in daylight. You understand what I'm trying to say, Kunle? So going back to what you said, so Trump what he can do is say, I'm going to send National Guard there because he can use the incitement. That's a federal law because of incitement of violence, which is, we all know, is bullshit. That's overused. That's an abuse of the incitement or insurrection bill. There's no insurrection in these neighborhoods. There's just homicide and rape and murder. That's it. That's not something that's a threat to the security. It's not a threat to the sovereignty of the state or the country. It's just a threat to the quality of life. But what he can do is he can use it. But we've seen in the past that America is not a democratic country. The president and the people in power can do whatever they want, and they can just rewrite the laws. So it doesn't matter. This is not the first time laws have been broken or have been twisted for anybody's purpose. Biden did it when he was in office. Biden had the Uhuru Group, which is a black socialist group, arrested for espionage because they were pro-Russian, which is bullshit. So Trump will find his way. As long as Trump has the power of whatever the power establishment is in America, which is the money in the banks, he can get away with this. Because I've always said the U.S., and I don't think there's any country in the world which is actually democratic. When the government wants to do what it wants to do, it will do it. Same thing as in Russia. If Putin wants to not have elections next year, he can do it because he has money and power behind him. What are your thoughts, Kunle?
Yes, what Trump's plan is very, well, what I think is very Machiavellian. And we have to look at whether this Machiavellian approach can work. And one of the things that you highlighted was the problems of some of the state laws that our criminals. Now, you can't, no soldiers or boots on the ground or National Guard can change this. This has to be changed from a different approach to the state courts, because state courts and state laws have their own independence. And the reason it's Machiavellian is because it's challenging the sovereignty of these states. The United States means that these states were, in theory or in practice, to the untrained eye, or how I'd see it, they were a bunch of countries that were states that came together to unite to form a United States. And so, therefore, the question of losing sovereignty, some of these states may decide, well, I mean, in theory, not in reality. I can't imagine America breaking apart, but nothing is impossible in this world. But if there is too much of a disconnect, these states could start trying to break away. That's why in Nigeria, we don't like to have state police. We are afraid that if states have their own police and their own weapons, they would want to break away. I think American governmental system is more stable, that wouldn't allow that. On the other point of America not being a democracy, I agree. And the reason I agree is because both houses are controlled by one lobby group. And the entire foreign policy of America is being governed by a foreign entity, and it's thoroughly undemocratic.
Yeah, not just AIPAC. You have the NRA to the rifles. I would rather use this, say that what happens is Congress and Senate are run by money. And it's actually one instrument. Whatever instrument is behind AIPAC is also, they're basically run by the bank. The bank. And what I mean by the bank is whoever these guys are, I don't know who they are, Rothschild or whoever, but there's one, it's an oligarchical system, basically. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so the question is, when you want to know who is running the country, you find out who you can't protest against. So in China, you protest Xi Jinping. In Russia, you can't protest Putin. In North Korea, you can't protest Kim. And
yeah, but the question is, but there's a bigger problem,
America,
though.
You can't protest
a bigger question. We know that, okay, Russia's
and the Western world, all the so-called Western democracies, you can't protest Israel.
But here's the question: where does Putin's power come from? Because Putin is the head of a big army. By himself, he can't do that. They could turn on him and kill him. So it's more complex than that. If it's not just one man, what Putin is he's the CEO of Russia, but there are a lot of shareholders and people in the background that if he doesn't do what they tell him to do, they will kill him. Do you get my point?
Yes. I'm oversimplifying. I'm oversimplifying just to explain to you that I can't really think for sure.
So in America, it's Congress and Senate, they're the power. And if you go back even further, it's actually the CIA, the FBI, and the State Department. That's what runs America. Go ahead. Yeah.
So to discover the only true democratic countries are countries that are not controlled by Israeli dominance, which means the entire Western world is, with the exception maybe, I think, of Japan. I think Japan is the only true democratic nation in the world. Everybody else has a story to tell.
Yeah.
I think it's only Japan. Everybody else has a story to tell. And as you can see, Japan is extremely successful.
What about Ghana? What about Ghana?
Nobody hates them.
What about Ghana?
Well, in China itself will say...
No, I said Ghana.
Oh, Ghana. Well, I mean, I don't... African countries are fledgling. China, in their defense, will say, okay, you can't vote and change the leaders, but you can vote and change the policies. And in China, the entire system of how you get into politics is thoroughly meritocratic. They go by numbers and they go by stats. If you're found to be corrupt, you can be executed with gunfire. You don't hear of any rich Chinese politicians. And apart from Xi Jinping, I don't know any Chinese politicians. I mean, they're spokesmen, but I mean, they're not influential.
So here's the thing, Kule. See, people mix up voting with democracy. See, voting is just appointing who's going to be running things, but it's not. It doesn't mean they're going to be running your agenda. So, for example, Americans vote in people, but if you look at the polls, the people that America votes in Congress and Senate doesn't represent America's the will of the people as far as the running country. So, to me, the true democracy is when the will of the people is actually enacted in the laws and the behavior. It's not just that they get to choose someone. So a democratic nation will be one in which I could vote you in. Then once you get in, you have to look at the poll. You have to poll the country and see what we want you to do while you're in. But it doesn't make a sense if I just vote you in, and then after I vote you in, you now oppress me. You get my point. But Americans think that's democracy. That once you've voted, once you vote somebody in, the democratic process means you also have to put pressure on whoever's there to enact your will, the will of the majority. and the people. So when you talk about a country like China, maybe they may not have a voting system, but if the communist, if the party that's in there, the one party, or if the people that are in there are enacting the will of the people, then it's de facto a democratic country, even if they didn't vote them. Because what democracy is concerned is not much of voting who leads you; it's being led by the consensus of the people. What do you think? Yeah.
Yes, and also essentially, even if the people are not voting, the people want certain things. They want basic justice. They want food, water, security, shelter, education, and employment. And
That's it.
if your system is providing a better standard of living for everybody, then why do you need elections? Why do you need to vote someone else in? Why do
Yeah.
you need to discuss it? If my life is getting better under you and everyone's life is getting better, what are we calling why do you want to change the system? That's a very
Yeah.
valid question. You have to ask anybody that has criticism of Chinese government, is that
Yeah.
the Chinese people are flourishing and they are actually doing better than every single other Western democracy. Every single Western European white hegemonistic based democracy. Even if they are better than China now, China is catching them up. They've overtaken some, they're gaining on others in terms of influence. And Chinese people are very free. They travel the world and they come right back to their country. Same with Iran. If Iran was not free, why do Iranians leave their country, go to other countries, hang out there, and then come back to Iran? They wouldn't do that if there was a problem in Iran.
Yeah, the country's doing well. It's only Nigerians who stay in America when they come here.
Yeah.
These
are still, I don't want to shout too much of their things because I don't know a lot about it. But all I know is their system works. That's all I know. I'm not saying that therefore we should take on that system. Our culture may not take on that system well because if Nigeria went into one party politics, for example, that would be hell.
Someone said, going off again. This show is not about Nigeria again. We're going a little bit off time. We're talking about Chicago.
I want to come back. So we're talking about.
So let me. We have to end up. So what I was going to say was the mayor of Chicago. The mayor of Chicago says that, and I agree with him. He says that sending in troops and stuff is not going to solve the problem. I think he's partly wrong. That will partly solve the problem. He said what they need is money for their schools, money for community engagement, social things. And I agree with him. But that doesn't mean that it's wrong for Trump to send in National Guard. Very quickly, in D.C., they show black people in the hood who don't commit crimes. They're like, I welcome these people because I live in fear. I bet you if you poll blacks in Chicago who aren't criminals, and the majority of black people in Chicago aren't criminals, it's just that there's a highest percentage that are. If you tell those guys who live in those cities where there's bullets flying, they'll be like, please send them in. But the irony is that he'll send in guard and they won't go to those black cities. So that's all I'll say. So I'll say the mayor of Chicago is right, but he's part of the problem because he needs to figure out as a politician how he's going to make sure that his community is funded and has social development and infrastructure and everything to fight crime, which is actually crime is a symptom of poverty and of oppression and also of corruption, because we know the U.S. government is allowing drugs to get into these cities for black people to sell. So what are your last thoughts on that, Kule?
Yes, Trump's position and efforts are short term. You can't Batman a country into a safe and flourishing economy. You have to follow up law and order, which is a right-wing policy, with left-wing options to sustain that law and order. Otherwise, all he's doing is just clearing up a street that's going to be messed up. The moment the government changes, could even change next year or whenever. It's just a temporary solution, and it's only for the optics, and it does not create any sustainable impact. But Trump can now turn back and say, look at what I did. During my time, this place was safe. It was only temporarily safe because you cleared the area. But I mean, after a while, they're just going to move back in again. So you have to do something, socialist policy. So the mayor is right. You have to implement socialist policies. But I mean, is he one of those same mayors that's always running off to Israel? I mean, is he focused on America?
Yeah. My bet is he's not focused. He's sitting up in there and he's reacting now because he never believed that Trump would do this. So now that Trump is doing this, he's talking about socialism. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a
Chicago. I understand.
It has to be systemic. It has to, and he has to. The mayor should be out in the neighborhoods of D.C. I mean, of Chicago. He should be in the firing line, out in those neighborhoods. Look what's going on. and say we're tired of this shit. There needs to be somebody within the black community at large in America who's a political leader and activist to say this is going, not this must end, this does end now. We had them before, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Cole. We don't have any of these guys. And these guys died. They died to provide some vision for us. And it was working out well, but because a lot of successful black people owe that to the work that Martin Luther King and these guys did. But now we're looking at a Holocaust within our inner cities in which you will never see another Malcolm X arise anymore. That's how bad it is. And I don't have respect for any of these mayors or anybody. Hakeem Jeffries out here refusing to back Mamdani because AIPAC is paying him. So all of these black mayors all over the USA are just getting paid to toe the line for AIPAC, and they're not paying attention to what's going on in their black communities. I know. So on that note, your last comments, then we'll head out. Yeah.
Yes, now that we're beginning to see these politicians for what they are, and Trump is exposing them in different ways, I hope that the American people can open their eyes before the next midterms and the next elections to start putting in place people that are not AIPAC controlled, so that interest in their cities can be taken, so that these socialist policies can be implemented after the short-term efforts that Trump has done, so that in future, long-term, someone else will come and do what Trump has done in the short term and then fix the long-term problems. And then I think when America starts doing the right thing, it's infectious. Everybody else around them starts doing the right thing and people start working towards. And then you can now start having the idea that America is a commonwealth that wants everyone to do well and not just America against the shithole countries of the world.
And also America only for whites, because this country is only for white people right now.
Yes, the world is for everyone. And one for all and all for one. We're all on this big rock flying around the universe, and we need to make it work.
One for one and all for one. The Three Musketeers.
I don't know what the score is. I think as soon as we're done, the second.
Yeah, but we'll continue. We'll talk more about this tomorrow afternoon. Okay, thank you.
All right. So it's been interesting from myself, Mustafa. It's been an interesting day of politics. We bid you adieu, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I'm going to have to